So, where did you live during the war?
During World War II, my family and I lived in Rotterdam, South Holland, the Netherlands.
And did you live anywhere else?
Yeah, for a time. During the worst part of the war, as far as the famine era goes, I lived in Amsterdam for a time.
Okay. So did you ever get in trouble during the war?
Me get into trouble? There was a time when we were very hungry, and there was beans. These kidney beans were planted in the streets, in the park areas, and what have you. And I watched them do that, and I couldn't resist the temptation, and decided one day that, hey, my family deserves something to eat. So I went and filled my pockets with the seeds. But the problem was I got caught. So then they hauled me off to the police station and stuff, and I ended up having to stay there in jail. It took a while for my mother to come and get me, and then over there's no telephone, so they had to contact her and what have you. So I guess if you want to call it trouble, I was in trouble.
Well, how old were you at the time?
At that point in time, probably, let's see, I think it was in 44, spring of 44, so I was 8.5.
Okay, so what did you do during Christmas?
Well, Christmas during the war, and especially in 1944, was pretty bad. The Germans had rounded up all the men, just 18 to, I don't remember, 30 or something like that, and we're marching them off to Germany. And I had a little sister, and I felt like that she deserved a Christmas, and as much as my mother had said, we wouldn't be able to do anything for Christmas. So I went shopping around town and found a man that would give me a job or let me help him fix the Christmas trees for sale, on the condition that Christmas Eve he would give me a Christmas tree. And so I did that, and when Christmas Eve rolled around, he gave me my tree, and he gave me a guilder, which wasn't a heck of a lot, especially in that period of time, but it was enough so that I could buy a present for my little sister and a little thing for my mother. And I don't remember what I bought, but it couldn't have been much with one guild.
So, what about for toilet paper? What did you do for that?
Well, okay, what happened, that's during a different period of time when I was living in Amsterdam. And what you're referring to really is a story that I've told around to my kids, and that you've probably picked up there, is that money for a period of time really didn't have any value. So much so, and with where my uncle had monies, he had more money than whatever. Anyway, we used money as toilet paper instead of buying toilet paper, because it was cheaper that way.
So, what about the black market?
Black market was an interesting thing. I've had some fun times and what have you during the period of time that I was living with my uncle in Amsterdam. Just a couple of blocks or so from on the street where he lived was an open market. And one of the corners in that open market area, people would gather and what have you to trade in black market merchandise, goodies and things like that that have been smuggled in from England and what have you. And they would carry them in a box, in front of them. And so he walked through with different people and look and see what they had and what have you. But when I was lucky, and if I was lucky, and it's happened a few times, is that German soldiers come in and raid the market. And all they do is take the butts of their guns and tip that box over, so all the stuff and the goodies would dump out on the ground, so there'd be a mad scramble to see what you could get.
So, what about any famous people? Did you know any famous people?
Well, you're referring to the story I've said before too, is that Hitler's girlfriend, I don't know if they ever got married or not, but she was his fiancée, and they died together when they took their life. But her name was Eva Braun. She was a world champion swimmer. She was an Olympic swimmer, the last Olympics, or the last Olympics before World War II anyway. But she lived just a little ways up the road from us. And it was that's just an interesting thing. And talking about people that you've probably heard about, most of you have read the Diary of Anne Frank. Even though I didn't know it, but all that happened and occurred 2 blocks from where I was living there in Amsterdam. And what have you. It was kind of interesting to learn that after the fact.
So, with Eva Braun, did she commit suicide or did Hitler kill her? Do you know?
Well, I think they both died in the suicide pact. I'm not sure. But all right. Wartime is an interesting thing. As kids, to go through a war, to experience it, really becomes a day-to-day matter, and what have you. You experience the happenings, which many times were so sad. Some of them were pretty bad. I've had a machine gun put on my chest when I was all of 9 years old. But as kids, you develop a certain familiarity with it, and you go with the flow. These are things that are happening at the time, but to try and understand and reason why all this happened and the politics of it, that's something as a kid I never understood. And if I really think about it, I don't totally understand it yet.